Tan graphs are different to cos and sine graphs because they don't have the same cyclic nature. Tan graphs have vertical asymptotes, where I'm doing these blue lines.
Why there?
Because that's what I said. That's just how that's how they operate. Every pi, they have an asymptote. Okay. Now it looks kind of like a cubic graph, and it repeats like that. So that's your standard tan graph, right? Asymptotes at pi on 2, 3 pi on 2, 3 pi on 2, so it's every pi after pi on 2. Okay? Its standard period is what? How long from one point to the other? What's the standard period, do you think, if this is our...
2 pi.
Nope. How long to repeat one sequence?
Pi.
Pi. So from here to here is pi, and that's one sequence, up and then there. Okay, so period equals pi. Oop. Asymptotes okay, so period is pi, asymptotes every pi starting at pi on 2. Okay? Happy with that? Yeah. Right, so what happens when we try and transform that? So that's your standard y equals tan x. We use x here. So that's your standard y equals tan x graph up there. So what happens when we start trying to transpose that? Do you think that we have the same sort of things as we had with sine and cos?
Nope.
Do you think we have the same sort of things happening there? Is the amplitude going to affect it in any way, shape or form?
Yes.
Not overly. All right. Yes, it will. It'll make it go up faster or up slower, depending on what that A is, but it's not going to affect the general shape of our graph. Okay? So A is kind of irrelevant. X on B, right, if you had, or BX, I think we had BX, didn't we? I put X on B there, I shouldn't have. Normally we had BX. So is the B going to affect things? Yes, it is. So what does it do in your sine and cos graphs? What does it do in your sine and cos graphs? What does the B do? Changes the period. So that's going to do the same thing here. What was the way to calculate the period in a sine or cos graph? 2 pi over B. This time it is just pi over B. All right. So period equals pi over B. Unlike the other ones. So it's separate. Your asymptotes, when you're calculating them, okay, the standard asymptotes are every pi starting at pi on 2. To work it out for this one, all right, your asymptotes start at pi over 2b and negative pi over 2b.
So that makes
So
plus minus.
they start, yeah, so you could do plus minus. So they start at these points and then they are again every period. So like here, they start at every pi, they start at pi on 2 and negative pi on 2, and then every pi after that, you have another asymptote. So if we have this one, you work out your period first, you work out where your asymptotes start, and then each time you add an asymptote, you add a period. All right, does that make sense?